Netflix has failed, Paramount has won, and the future of Mortal Kombat might never be the same. That's right, because Warner Brothers has traded hands once again. That's like 3 times in the past 2 years for anyone keeping track. So yeah, it's been a wild ride to be sure. But what does this mean for the future of Mortal Kombat? Honestly, it's looking pretty good, in my opinion. Because Netflix straight up said, we don't value the gaming division of Warner Brothers very much. Which implies they mainly wanted to make new shows and stuff like that using Warner Brothers IPs and whatnot. So while we might have gotten new Mortal Kombat shows on Netflix and maybe some new movies too, the games likely would have suffered or at least taken a back seat. And as a big fan of the Mortal Kombat games myself, that would not have been ideal, and I assume most of you watching agree and are Mortal Kombat gaming fans as well. But Paramount seems to value WB products far more, and I mean that literally, since they paid so much for Warner Brothers that Netflix pretty much said, yeah, that's too much for us. And keep in mind that Netflix earns more money than Paramount. Or in other words, Paramount paid way more for Warner Brothers than they're actually worth, just because they wanted Warner Brothers that badly, which I think could be a good sign. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below while I go into more detail about this whole situation. Because another day means more Mortal Kombat 1 news. It feels so good to say that. Subscribe below to stay up to date on future Mortal Kombat events, and without any further ado everyone, let's begin. Alright everyone, Netflix has failed to buy Warner Brothers and instead Paramount is gonna take over. And to be specific, this was a hostile takeover. I wasn't sure until asking Google, but yes, these events do fall under the definition of hostile takeover. Which sounds very dramatic, but actually it's a business term where companies go straight to the shareholders instead of dealing with leadership of the company itself. So in other words, when WB's leaders said no, Paramount said fine, we're going to the people who pay you, the shareholders, and they said yeah, we prefer Paramount, and that's how the takeover happened. Real quick, let me check Google for the exact definition to be hyper specific. Okay, here we go. A hostile takeover is defined by an acquiring company's attempt to buy a target company against the wishes of the target's management and board of directors. It is hostile because it bypasses leadership, directly appealing to shareholders via tender offers or proxy fights to gain over 50% voting control. Though keep in mind, it was a bidding war, so Netflix could have kept raising the price of WB and made a better offer, but they decided not to. Likely because WB wasn't worth that much money in their opinion, and Netflix might be right about that. Because to me it seems like Paramount just really wants Warner Brothers and was not going to take no for an answer. But next up, there's a message from Netflix themselves. If you want to skip this part, it might get a bit boring. Here's the timestamp on screen. But for today's video, I think it's important to highlight Netflix's response to this whole situation. Netflix Incorporated today announced that it has declined to raise its offer for Warner Brothers Netflix. Its board of directors has determined that Paramount Skydance's latest proposal constitutes a superior proposal under the terms of WBD's existing merger agreement with Netflix. Netflix issued the following statement in response from CEOs Ted Sarandos and Greg Peters. The transaction we negotiated would have created shareholder value with a clear path to regulatory approval. However, we've always been disciplined, and at the price required to match Paramount's latest offer, the deal is no longer financially attractive, so we are declining to match the Paramount Skydance bid. So yeah, like I mentioned earlier, Netflix had an offer, Paramount gave a better offer, and Netflix said that's too expensive in our opinion. We just don't think Warner Brothers is worth that financially. Warner Brothers is a world-class organization, and we want to thank David Zaslav, Gunnar Weinfeld, Bruce Campbell, Brad Singer, and the WBD board for running a fair and rigorous process. We believe we would have been strong stewards of Warner Brothers' iconic brands, and that our deal would have strengthened the entertainment industry and preserved and created more production jobs in the US, but this transaction was always a nice to have at the right price and not a must have at any price. So yeah, there you go. Netflix pretty much confirmed we could afford to make a better deal for WB, but we don't need them that badly. We just wanted them. Netflix's business is healthy, strong, and growing organically, powered by our slate and best-in-class streaming service. This year, we'll invest approximately $20 billion in quality films and series, and we'll expand our entertaining offering. And yada yada, you get the idea. So Netflix pretty much confirmed we're doing fine financially, possibly even better than Paramount, but we don't think WB is worth $10 billion or however much Paramount paid for them. Oh, never mind, I was way off, $110 billion. I swear I'm dyslexic sometimes. Was never diagnosed, but sometimes I do think I'm dyslexic. I get my numbers mixed up. So yeah, an absurd amount of money. Entire nations on Earth, entire continents are not worth $110 billion, so that's a lot of money. But alright, like mentioned earlier, I think this transaction could be better for Mortal Kombat fans in the long run, especially if you prefer the games over the shows and movies. Though keep in mind, Paramount makes new shows and movies all the time as well, so they could make Mortal Kombat shows and films as well. But then on top of that, I'm hoping that, fingers crossed, they value the gaming division of Warner Brothers more than Netflix does. Because don't forget, Netflix straight up said, we don't care that much about the gaming division of Warner Brothers. It wasn't even a factor in our bidding offer. Or in other words, when deciding how much to pay for Warner Brothers Discovery, they didn't even consider their gaming division, so they don't value it very much. Which is kinda crazy because Warner Brothers gave us Arkham City, right? The entire Batman Arkham series was from WB, along with Hogwarts Legacy. That game broke so many records. Then of course we have Mortal Kombat, which continues to be the highest selling fighting game in history, right? Well, unless we count Smash Bros. Some people do, some don't, but Smash Bros does technically earn the most money. However, they don't make games as often, so I would argue that Mortal Kombat overall still makes more money than any other fighting game. And yet, despite all these factors, Netflix straight up said, we don't care that much about the gaming division. Here's an exact quote. Though keep in mind, this was from weeks ago. The news that Netflix is trying to buy Warner Brothers didn't ever look like it would be good for game players, but a recent investor call by the streamer suggests things are a whole lot worse than we previously imagined. Netflix co-CEO Gregory Peters told investors that when it comes to Warner's gaming division, it didn't even factor it into the $83 billion deal. It was apparently considered to add nothing to the company's overall value because they're relatively minor compared to the grand scheme of things. Yeah, so there you have it. Netflix didn't have anything big planned for the gaming division of Warner Brothers. So that's why, in my opinion, maybe it is better for Paramount to own the franchise instead of Netflix. But hey, only time will tell. Maybe fast forward 5 years from now and I'm completely wrong. Paramount has killed the WB franchise, all the IPs are ruined, Mortal Kombat is dead, and I mean actually dead, not just how people say it online nowadays. Perhaps in the future, all of that does come to pass and I'll eat these words, but for now, in the present time, it does seem to me like Paramount might be better for Mortal Kombat in a gaming sense. In the present day, it does seem like Paramount might make a better future for Mortal Kombat than Netflix would have. Oh yeah, real quick, I suppose I should mention the political aspect because people on social media are talking all about that. I honestly don't know very much about this, but apparently Paramount is owned by more right-leaning people and obviously Netflix is very left-leaning, hence all the woke memes on social media, right? They buy an anime, make a Netflix adaptation, then it becomes woke, yada yada yada. I bet many of you watching are aware of the meme that Netflix buys something, then makes a show or film about it and adds a bunch of woke stuff to the film. Now, is that always the case? I don't think so, but regardless, most would agree that Netflix is left-leaning and apparently Paramount is more right-leaning. And because Warner Brothers Discovery owns so many famous IPs, people saw this as a tug of war back and forth, right? The left and the right were fighting for this big franchise and all of its IPs, all of its characters, you get the idea. In many people's minds, it felt like if Warner Brothers was bought by Paramount, then Scooby-Doo is suddenly gonna become right-leaning, but if Netflix buys them, then Scooby-Doo's gonna suddenly be super woke. Which, I mean, we all saw the Velma show, that was already pretty woke. Also, I think WBD is already pretty left-leaning on their own, and they wanted Netflix to buy them specifically. The board of directors and leadership at Warner Brothers Discovery did want Netflix to own the company and not Paramount, which is why the hostile takeover had to happen. Though to be fair, at the end of the day, Paramount did pay more money. That's how it works. When a company goes up for sale, there's a bidding war, and Paramount did win the bidding war, despite having less money than Netflix. I do think that's the case. In fact, let me Google that real quick before I look extra silly. Nah, it's hard to tell right now because the value of Paramount has gone up after buying Warner Brothers Discovery. Obviously that's gonna happen, so we'd have to look at the value beforehand, which is much tougher to Google and find exact data on. As of right now, after acquiring acquiring Warner Brothers, Paramount is worth more, obviously. However, they also just spent a buttload of money to buy Warner Brothers, so the literal worth might be less than Netflix because they had a great year and earned tons of money, whereas Paramount just spent a bunch of money, so it's hard to actually know which company has more money at the current moment. Anyways, everybody, that's about the long and short of this whole situation. WBD went up for sale, that's Warner Brothers Discovery, and originally they wanted Netflix to buy them. There was a bidding war, and the leadership said, you know, your bid is better, Paramount, but we still want Netflix. So for a short while there, it looked like Netflix was going to own Warner Brothers and by extension Mortal Kombat and all the other IPs. However, Paramount did not give up and said, we're gonna appeal to your shareholders instead because our bid is literally higher. We deserve the company because we're paying more in this bidding war. To which Warner Brothers shareholders said, yeah, that makes sense to us. That seems like a better deal, so we're going with Paramount. And that's how the hostile takeover happened. Which means as of today, Warner Brothers Discovery is owned by Paramount, and I hope that's a good thing in the long run because Netflix did say they don't care that much about the gaming division, which I do care about. I like Mortal Kombat, I like Hogwarts Legacy, I like Warner Brothers games. So hopefully, fingers crossed, Paramount values them as well, whereas Netflix said they straight up don't. But one last time, let me know your thoughts in the comments, then leave a like if you enjoyed today's video, and finish that combo by subscribing and ringing that bell. Make sure to come back next time, everyone, and as always, stay underdogs.